Микрофон. Доброго дня всім.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we thank our guests. And also we have several people here who are present in this hall. And I would like to say who is here. We have Igor Didenko, head of the Parliamentary Subcommittee on Road Safety. Alexander Filonyuk, trade union organization, and also
Anastasia Borenkova.
We have Anastasia Borenkova, representative of auditor, who verified the survey. The data in this research, and also here is head of traffic Vasily Bryantsov, but I can, yes, he is in the hall. And also Volodymyr Karavayev, advocate expert on legal aspects of road safety, who will comment on the legal matters. And also we have here Grava Ukraine head Natalia Basilevska and Grava head Edmir Kresnichi. And also we have the representative of agency that carried out the research, Lydia Antonyuk. And we will discuss the data, and then we will ask our honorable experts to comment. And one of the chief experts is Alan Ross, who will comment. And he is the president of the International Road Safety Center. And one of the main methods of calculation of losses in case of road accidents, the methodology was provided by the center. And now the presentation. We assessed the overall economic loss from traffic accident and loss of lives. We want to analyze social and economic losses, and this is the main task. And we can assess what investments are needed for this area. And the depth of this program, and how to distribute investment that is obtained by the state in order to decrease the losses. And thus we will be able to assess the consequences, the results. So we didn't have such a system of planning and research, and we hope that now, based on this data, we will be able to plan appropriately based on economic indicators. We see that losses are connected with trauma, injuries, and death, and also there is death of men, women, children, and also injuries. Two categories: people who sustained heavy injuries and got disability, and light injuries, and this leads to losses. So if we gather all these categories, we will get overall loss. negative influence on economy of the state. Next slide, you can see statistics of deaths and traffic accidents, 14% in 2015 of deaths because of traffic accidents. And this research is based on 2015, the previous year, and all the data, all calculations are based on statistics of 2015. So this presentation will be provided to you, and it will be on our site. So you will be able to get the information. So statistics of road accidents. 17% traffic accidents causes death and injury, and others are without death and injuries. So only 12% 12% died, and 87% were injured. So these figures, they look small, but they result in big losses. So there are many different areas where these losses are sustained because of these accidents. Also, statistics can be divided according to gender principle. We see that men prevail, 76.2% men, and our men, they believe that they are cool drivers, maybe that's why. Also, if we look at the next slide, so there are 19 times more men who got injured in traffic accidents than women. Also, the age, starting from 20 to 45 years. So this category of people suffer the most. So the state loses active, productive people who could contribute to society, to economy, and they are the basis of our state. And we should work more with these categories. So information campaign should be carried out, and also police should do more, should direct their efforts at this category, because we see that control function of police was reduced, but we hope for changes in this area. So the biggest number of those who died or were wounded are in this category. Also, next slide, the statistics among men and women. Different types of injuries and reasons why they were wounded or injured. You can look at this information, but the men are more vulnerable in this. You know that we have less men than women in our state because men maybe have some negative attitude towards their own life. They should be more careful. And also, next slide, compensation in case of injury or death. So we based our calculations on these figures in order to understand what amount of money and other assets the state loses because of traffic accidents. We developed methods of assessment of losses, and there are 3 approaches. The first one is based on official data, calculations of losses, and also profits that were not provided to the state, and some experts were proponents of this first approach when we took into account the losses of the state. Second approach, we take into account the losses of the state and households. And the third approach, by Alan Ross, we calculate social economic losses based on gross output. And this method is good because previous 2 approaches do not take into account shadow part of our economy, and thus you see that the figures there are not high. And if you look at gross output, we see different figures. Now I give the floor to Lydia Antoniuk because she communicated with our experts and she knows figures well, and she will tell you about this in more detail. Good afternoon, everyone. I will tell you how we conducted this research. I am going to comment on approach, and then we will look at different approaches. We carried out the interviews with experts, 12 interviews. Moderator, I conducted this interview as moderator. We developed special form questionnaire. And who were these experts? The best in their field, and they deal with these issues of traffic accidents. These are lawyers, doctors, insurance companies, and we were not able to communicate with the Ministry of Health, and you know that it is really difficult to calculate all the expenses there. And it was really difficult to calculate all the expenses connected with treatment and rehabilitation of those who suffered. Each interview lasted for about 30 or 40 minutes, and even 1.5 hours, because the topic was really interesting and important. And all the interviews are recorded, and they will be provided to Olga in order to verify all the information. There are opportunities to do this, and based on interview and the data we got, and the calculations were made. So State Traffic Institute named after Shulgin, and also there were some works of our colleague. She is going to comment, and Natalia Argavich, Lena Slobina, Alan Ross. And based on this interview and data, we communicated a lot how to do it properly, because in some cases we differed in our opinion. What are these losses, whether it is the loss for the state or for... So there was some circulation of money is going on. That's why it was difficult to calculate all this. And we believe that we should have done 3 approaches, and all these 3 calculations is like a system of coordinates. And in each approach there are advantages and drawbacks. We have to work on these approaches, and in the process of our work we faced many problems while calculating, because some databases were not accurate enough, or statistics of national police, they provide full data, but this data is not detailed in order to provide calculation properly. Or we do not know the difference in injuries, for example, heavily injured and lightly injured people, or the data on deaths, and the structure of each traffic accident is not known, because there can be different people with different severity of injuries. And the second problem, this is healthcare sphere. It was difficult to calculate, so we calculated proportions, and we were provided with information from statistical department to get more accurate data. Also, moral losses. So in our calculations, for example, if head of enterprise died in the accident, or a famous senior, or some professional, maybe this is a cynicism, but the loss is different, the calculations are different. Or for example, if a person has a big family and he is a breadwinner, so or a death of a person who doesn't have a family, so this is cynicism, but we should take into account all these aspects. So moral losses, it was difficult to assess, because we do not have such a practice here in Ukraine, and there were some cases, and there was some compensations for moral loss, and maybe this is 5% of insurance compensation, and this money is small. And Alan provided us with advice. We took the percentage that is used in other states and calculated based on this percentage. And this is so this is a comprehensive research. That's why we should do it now in more detail, maybe. And we look at the slide, what we got in the result, the first approach. So the expenses of the states, the losses, the official data, we got that overall loss of traffic accident losses were 485, and this is, we see this figure, and in each approach we got absolutely different figures. And the last line, this is the orientation, what we can. So this is minimal calculations, and I believe that these figures are much higher. They are big, but they are higher in reality. And if we are speaking about value of life, we calculated. So this is the information on deaths, and we got also a large spectrum of figures. So first is 79,000, and in large approach 400, and the average is 219. So these are our figures.
I would like to comment on the 79,000, why we have such a big spread. In the first line, we use only the costs of state, how much the state pays, the salary of 2,000, which is an average salary in Ukraine. On this figure, we base the figure of 79,000, and the last approach is gross output approach. This is what we see, what is the difference between actual GDP, which we have of about 400,000, and the difference with between formal figures and informal calculations. The figure could be higher if we have more statistics, more data. If our economy is not in the shadow, this is how the state evaluates us. How much an individual earns and spends, and how much the state could earn on the account of an individual which died due to the traffic accident. Then I first tell you a few words about the first approach. The first approach, you can see what factors we included: direct costs and indirect costs. In this approach, our colleagues developed an Excel scheme where all indicators are input. We can specify them in this big formula in Excel format. In this approach, we also conducted calculations for families with children and without children, families of people injured in traffic accidents. Here you can see the detailed table by each item, broken down by indicators. I dealt with calculating economic losses and costs of the state and households. We divided the costs into those of the state because of injuries or deaths, because of traffic accidents. We do not have statistics on disabilities, how many people became disabled due to traffic accidents. That is why we divided the figures by the costs of the state and costs of households. Costs of state, they include such components as losses because of shortfall in revenues, and also costs of compensations paid to people because of the loss of
домогосподарств, які отримують допомогу скільки років протягом ми знаємо, що діти отримують допомогу від втрати годувальника до 18 років, а якщо вони навчаються, то до 21 року отримують. Ну, якісь певні припущення ми робили і обчислювали кількість тих отримувачів цієї допомоги. Це втрати держави. Втрати домогосподарства, зрозуміло, що пов'язані з втратою заробітної плати того члена родини, який загинув. Друга частина втрат нами оцінюваних – це втрати від тимчасової втрати працездатності, тобто від захворювань, від того, скільки людина перебувала на лікуванні, внаслідок, знову ж таки, це пов'язано з виплатою з соціальними фондами допомоги по, не допомоги, а це на захворювання лікарняні. Це недоотриманий, знову ж таки, валовий внутрішній продукт внаслідок того, що людина не перебувала в тривалий час на робочому місці і не виробляла продукцію. І наші оцінки показали, що, а це не, це, напевно, Ліда, найдіть, будь ласка, оцей, що втрати від травмування в нас складають не більше 0,4% від ВВП, втрати від смертності складають майже відсоток від ВВП. І що можна з цього приводу сказати? Да, нібито цифри невеличкі. І я б взагалі не робила б такий акцент на таких цифрах за даний період. Ці цифри цікаво аналізувати протягом в динаміці. Нам цікаво, як же, чи ті витрати, які держава планує понести на зміну покриття, на вдосконалення дорожнього руху, наскільки ці видатки, які планує понести держава, наскільки вони ефективні і наскільки вони призведуть до економії державних коштів, скажімо так, до економії коштів домогосподарств, на покращення якості життя і таке інше. Тому ці оцінки за будь-яким підходом, вони цікаві в динаміці, а не в статиці. І робити акцент, що вартість людського життя в нас така чи інша, ну да, але це дуже такий спірний факт. Його треба оцінювати, вартість життя людського, вона є безцінна для кожної людини. З точки зору держави треба оцінювати, який ефект буде від запровадження тих чи інших заходів. Тому я дуже рада, що виник інтерес до такої тематики, оскільки і вона вже вийшла з кола наукового, оскільки я представляю, в принципі, наукову організацію, це Інститут економіки і прогнозування, і ми вже вийшли з кола наукового на державний рівень, і держава вже почала цікавитися такою проблематикою. Це вже дуже є позитивний момент.
Дякуємо. І наступне слово ми хочемо передати Алану Росу. У нас там є якісь трошки технічні проблеми з перекладом, але я так розумію, ми можемо...
The figures have been already. We are giving the floor to Igor Didenko, who heads the committee. We would like to hear the comment whether the calculations are used, and after you, we will give you the floor when our technical problems are mended. Thank you for this event, for calculating the value of life. We have been always talking about the problems, how many people have died, and every year we looked into the simple figures. So the society now address these problems. Many people die, but the state does nothing. This problem, they exist in society. The leaders of the state, they today budget our revenues and expenditures for the next year. This is the system of the management of the country where each kopeck will give us either growth, economic growth, or economic fall. So officially the first methodology is more official, but the third methodology, it is closer to reality. Because we often talk but not do. Money, they consist of percentage shares. So the work group at the Cabinet of Ministers, it would work there, and it will address this road safety in Ukraine. The government receive figures which will be in the focus, how to develop the country. So we would like to listen to Mr. Alan Ross. So we are giving the floor to Mr. Ross. Thank you, Mr. Igor, for your comment. With your efforts, I hope we will communicate these figures to the leaders of our country so that we have quite a different approach to planning. Mr. Alan Ross, we are interested why you decided to use this approach of calculations, why you insisted on using this approach. Please ground your position. Your figure looks just the most correct one.
Say that if you're going to do this kind of work, you need to do something which is international. What we've taken, the approach we took, is the minimum, absolute minimum cost. So even though it comes to about $2 billion US, the actual figure is probably about $4 billion. So the approach we took was based on what they call the gross output method, which is internationally accepted as a very basic way of tackling this problem of estimating, because often when you start this kind of work, there is not enough data usually, and the data is unreliable. So the other methods, and there are some methods, for example, one called willingness to pay. If you did the calculation using that method, the actual value would be 2 or 3 times what LIDA has been able to estimate. So the method used, gross output, I would say is the absolute minimum. So the other 2 methods that were looked at, okay, this is the way government may work here, but if you want to compare with international, then the minimum you have to take is the third method. I would say that is the absolute minimum. And if you think about it, your country, as Igor has said, is now in the process of the budget. You don't have enough money to do all the things you want to do. But we are throwing away at least $2 billion US, according to Lydia. I think it's actually more, 4 billion is probably more realistic. But whether it's, even if you take 2 billion, this is a lot of money. Imagine what we could do with that money. So it seems to me that if you take the early figures, 1 and 2, government does not think this is important, because this is not a transport problem. You have to understand this. This is an economic problem. The Ministry of Infrastructure cannot solve the problem. The police cannot solve the problem. The health ministry cannot by themselves solve the problem. All the key agencies have to work together in order to tackle this. And we know it can be done, because most of the European countries have reduced deaths by 50% in the last 10 years. And it is possible. We know what to do. So if you can set up the right structure, I believe you can actually do that. You have good technical people here. We just need to do the right things and set up the right structure and coordination. And I think Igor and his colleagues at the Rada are working on this, and I hope that they will be able to do that. Okay.
Thank you very much. Дякуємо. І наступною
Mr. Alan Ross, we thank you, and now we are giving the floor to the insurance sector market. They always address the payments and the insurance and how these calculations can impact insurance products and the amounts of payments paid by insurance companies to the victims of traffic traffic accidents and whether the number of payments under OSA go insurance. I'm giving the floor to Alexander Filanyuk, President of League of Insurance Companies. Thank you to the panelists for your presentation. They are very interesting, and you now cover not only the problem but also the statistics data which is negative in the life and microeconomic level of our citizens. You know that insurance companies are active stakeholders in road safety measures, implementations. League of Insurance Organizations of Ukraine focus their efforts on improving the cooperation with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Emergencies and Department of Roads Traffic and Ministry of Transport. Today, we insist on the Ministry of Infrastructure, which works actively on the draft law about mandatory liability of ministry, transport organizations to the passengers which were inflicted injuries because of traffic accidents. Now passengers pay themselves in the case of road accidents. This should be responsibility of the carrier but not of the injured individual. We hope that this bill would be supported in the parliament by our members of parliament. And you told about mandatory liability or mandatory insurance of liability. Our statistics has the other side of the problem. Today, insurance companies compensate more tangible losses than intangible losses. Life and health is compensated only by 5%. Everything should be vice versa. Here we have our partners at this conference. This is a renowned company, Grave Ukraine, which not only deals with insurance of life and health, but also they address implementation of mechanism of insuring victims of road accidents, insurance of life, health against
І якраз з тих обрахунків підходу номер 1, підходу номер
incidents, so approaches 1, 2 and 3, those calculations made by Mr. Alan Ross and the Institute. This is very important to assess how insurance companies can impact macroeconomic level. When we are talking about 2.5 or 0.5%, this is very significant influence on the macroeconomic level of our country. So the fund of protecting victims of road accidents, I want that this funds, they are they are put into protecting life and health of individual victims, problems of evaluating the value of life. There are many organizations in Ukraine which try to popularize themselves, or they conduct PR campaigns to combat consequences of accidents, road accidents. But I am sure we should have a national association. Our government has been implementing the program of improving roads and infrastructure. This influences much. The state of roads influence very significantly the rate of road accidents. So governmental bodies of our country should pay attention to this. Thank you for this presentations you provided today. We are giving the floor to Grave company representatives because they directly operate on the market, and I give the floor to Edmir Krasnichi.
So, besides of all numbers you mentioned, you also should consider the, let's say, psychological impact of such an accident, and as you also mentioned, the macroeconomic effects and consequences. I mean, I always bring as an example how much is valuable my life. I don't know. I mean, for you probably 1 hryvnia, for my family millions of hryvnia or even billions. You cannot pay that. So the effects on psychological side, I think, are have more influence than the costs you will have, and you will have the costs for sure in such an accident. And of course, then you have the next step. What will you do? How will you cover the costs for the cure? And then, of course, it depends from the injury you have. But a lot of questions how to cover the let's say, the activities of daily living. And here, of course, the insurance industry is trying to find solutions to offer the right products to the people of the Ukraine. I mean, here everything is also depending from the, let's say, from the salary of our people. Depending from the, let's say, financial options, we have to find products which, let's say, everybody can afford, and this will be a challenge for the future.
Thank you very much. І ще кілька слів, я думаю, може сказати Наталя Базилевська, яка...
Ms. Basilevska is also from Grave, Ukraine, and maybe she is going to add something. Thank you. Life of a person is really valuable, and human resource is the most important thing that is here in Ukraine. That's why we should develop human potential in Ukraine. This is the biggest challenge for our state, and this will motivate further development of our country. Life is assessed. We know, as Mr. Filanyuk said, 95% is compensated, and the life is assessed 150,000, but even this money is not paid, not because they do not want to. We know that traffic accidents lead to criminal liability, and people try to avoid criminal proceedings, and they try to negotiate these issues with those who suffered in an official way, and this is not included in statistics. That's why 150,000 deaths, it is too low, and in Europe it's about 2 million euros, and in other countries 15 million of euros. This is a sum. This is for the losses to the third party. This is colossal difference. So I cited these figures because I wanted that in my country there would be proper compensation. And now I would like to give the floor to video company. This is international auditor that works in 150 countries of the world. So if we have such an auditor, we hope that we will able to use these results of our research in work with our international investors. And now I give the floor to Anastasia Barenkova, the representative of video company in Ukraine. Good afternoon. I will briefly outline what we have been doing in the framework of this research. We started this work from June when we started this research. We carried out our work in accordance with international standards 4400. This is regulated procedures on financial information, and the standard is used for coordinated procedures. And the adherence to these standards mean that the auditor provides the results and expresses assurance that the calculations correspond to the methods used and do not have errors and based on real statistical data. And in this framework of this work, we provided consultations. Among them, this was identification of average age of person who suffered in traffic accident. Also, we assessed the coefficient, the number of school children, and we forecast real growth of GDP, and also the principles of the use of discount rate and the methods of its establishment. And briefly about our results. We studied the methods of evaluating life of persons who suffered in the result of traffic accidents. We verified the calculations in relation to methods, so how the methods were implemented. And we got conclusions that all formulas and there is no errors, and all formulas correspond to methodology, and it corresponds to the purposes according to our conclusions. Thank you. And we believe that our research is correct, and I have a question to expert, a lawyer, Volodymyr Karavayev. We invited him because we are interested in legal, practical implementation of our research. Can this data be used in court hearings in order to ground the compensation for people who suffered in the result of the traffic accident? Because as I know, before there was no such practice here in Ukraine. Thank you. I believe that this information is not enough to be used in practice. I didn't see the main, so a lot of work has been done, but I didn't see any ways how to implement these figures in reality. So experts say, what can we do further with these figures? How can we use them in real life? There is no real mechanism. So maybe there should be a document. So it should be introduced into legislation first and then implemented in life. And I believe that I wanted to hear that maybe someone worked in this area. So it should be introduced in the legal sphere, and then it can be reality of life. So I maybe assess the situation correctly, and maybe you agree with me, because this is half of work and you should move forward. And unfortunately, in my practical work, I never thought that insurance companies made real steps in order to improve situations in the road. So, and when we gather and we have a meeting with insurance companies, they do not want to provide safety in the roads. I am a normal person. I understand. The less traffic accidents we have, the bigger the profits of insurance companies. And why it doesn't work properly in Ukraine, we don't know. The insurance companies are not interested in road safety. So first, we should work in the sphere of legislation, and insurance companies should see that the formula that works in the whole world should work here in Ukraine. And until they are ready to work and to increase the safety on roads, nothing will change. So this is my assessment. Thank you. So this feedback is really important for us. This is the first step. So we have prospects, and there should be support. It depends on us, on people who want changes in this country, and also it depends on our officials and heads of state and private companies. And I see that Alan Ross wants to comment on this.
Задати питання.
Just a very quick comment. The main way or how this is used in other countries is not, you're quite right, it is not used directly to change the insurance. This has to go through legislation, and you have to decide what is the appropriate compensation. It is used in this way for investment. For example, as cost benefit. If you are, as a country, you have a road where there's a black spot where 10 people have died, then you can say, okay, this is the cost to the country. It is worth to spend some money to fix that location. Yes. So normally this data is used in two ways. One is for decisions about investment in infrastructure, for the engineers to decide if it is worth doing something or not. And secondly, to let the government realize what the losses are and what it can do to try to reduce those losses. It is not normally used in the way that you are trying to use it, that maybe the insurance people should immediately, because I think this is a bigger problem you have to discuss with insurance and the legislators on how to do that.
Дякую. І ще Наталя Базилевська.
Thank you. Natalia Bazilevska has a comment. I would like to say that you told everything in correct manner. I agree with you that insurance companies, they can't change many things. They will definitely take part when the country has insurance market in place. I will give the floor to one of the experts who conducted also was this research and the head of Department of Road Safety, because our topic is road safety. So we need comments of the experts today. I would like to thank you for the first in Ukraine independent attempt to assess the value of life of Ukrainians, because the level of road accidents was estimated in Ukraine only by the number of injuries and deaths, but not the value of life. The basis for this analytical research, this was statistics on the number of road accidents. We have made a new step this year. We are now developing the new database with the European Investment Bank consultants. We approximate this database to the European standards. It would be broad. More data on registration of road accidents will be used in this database, and the calculation of losses, loss estimate will change as well then. The first step has already been done. We have drafted the new regulation information on registration of road accidents. It is now pending in the Ministry of Health. We're supposed to meet soon the experts of the Motor Insurance Bureau. People who took part in the issuance of protocols in those cases where the parties of road safety accidents, they didn't call police, so we do not have statistics. We would like to establish sharing of experience and data, and we will have database of motor insurance companies when Euro protocol is issued. This would be more correct count of the number of road accidents after that. These estimates which you made and which the research made, they are very important because automatic videotaping will be implemented for the system to become operational. To start working, we need much money. To this end, we need economic substantiation of the results which we are going to get and investments which we need in order to get these results, these outcomes. So thank you very much again. We think that positive steps have been made, and we as police, we will put our best efforts to achieve success. Thank you to every panelist, to our audience. We have journalists who want to ask questions, but our briefing is almost over, so please ask your questions out of records. Thank you to everyone for coming. We hope to have fruitful cooperation.